Hey everybody, this is Vinny with MacPherson Firearms coming to you tonight from the MacPherson Firearms Classroom Studio. And we wanted to showcase a couple of our new products here. One being the MacPherson Firearms side folder, side-by-side comparison to the Law Tactical Gen 3M side folder. And the differences being mostly that the Law Tactical will work with any AR lower receiver that takes a rear mil-spec style receiver extension. And so the neat part about this is that you can basically add this to any receiver that you already own for the low price of $220. Brownell shipped this to our door in a little bit less than a week, and it does require quite a bit of assembly to put together. It's not going to be very cut and dry and straight like buying ours right out of the box. But basically, you need to remove this lower detent here, and this will allow you to take the switch out, which I can show you real quick. And there's a little spring behind there as well. So you pull the detent out. Okay, let's get this out of the way here. There's your spring, and here is your bolt capture / activation lever for the detent. So in order to take this out, in order to put the receiver extension in, you need to take that out. Just because this extension here requires, there's a castle nut in here that's basically finger tight. I put it on off camera. And it's really tough to push your button down here to depress your bolt catch and slide that castle nut into the recess here where it belongs. So basically the easiest way that I found was to take the latch out as well as the spring and the detent. Screw in the castle nut and then put it all back together. So it's a little bit invasive. Takes probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes if you're going slow. So it's really not terrible, but it is worth mentioning that there is some assembly required. They do send it to you already assembled, so you do need to disassemble it at the same time. But for the most part, any average person can take care of this on their normal bench without a bench block. The only time you'll really need a bench block is to torque down your receiver extension, which we've already done prior to this. So just so you know, it does not come with an end plate, a castle nut, or a receiver extension. What it does come with is a bolt extension, I guess I would call this. I didn't read through the directions because I've installed a few of these already, but it's a bolt extension, and basically what it is it's a piece that slides into the rear of your bolt carrier, like so, and allows your bolt carrier to extend through the Law Tactical side folding extension and depress your spring and buffer that would be residing inside your receiver extension. So the cool part about that is that you can most likely use a JP Enterprises silent capture system or any other type of modular buffer system. And also you can change out your mil-spec buffers if you wanted to go from an H to an H2 or for an H down to a carbine fairly easily. It's the standard procedure where you would fold your stock over, you'd depress your buffer detent and swap out your buffer as normal. So that part is great. The serviceability on the buffer is really kind of aces. The part that I don't like, that kind of rubs me the wrong way, is that normally when I'm in the field and I want to break down my AR, I like to just undo my pivot pin, undo my takedown pin and rely on the pivot pin to keep the upper and lower halves together. Well, what's going to happen is when you have your carrier in place, you're going to have the extension for the carrier. Okay, somebody was messing with that. There we go. You can have your extension for the carrier. It's going to be protruding from the upper receiver. So it's not going to allow you to pivot because this is going to be stuck inside here. So the only way to do this is to take off both pins, your pivot pin and your takedown pin, and slide the entire upper receiver out from the forward position. So from a serviceability standpoint, that bothers me just because I like the ability to just be able to keep my halves together if I get a clear malfunction or if I get to service my fire control group or whatever I need to do inside that receiver set. I don't need to muddy the waters with having external parts in there. Now that said, the MacPherson system relies on a proprietary buffer. And so where it's extended as part of the machining process, this piece is very essential to the operation of the MacPherson receiver. And one thing of note is that these come standard as a carbine buffer. So in order to change this out, we would have to remove the roll pin, remove the stop, and swap the weights, steel for tungsten, 1 for 1, to go up the chain from an H to an H2 to an H3. And so that proves a little bit cumbersome. Not only do you need to have the weights, but you need to have the appropriate tools to remove the roll pin, remove the stop, and swap the weights out. So that's the only tough part about this. But realistically, I mean, if you tune your rifle right, just like all of ours are out of the box, you can get the right buffer in there. You don't have to rely on an adjustable gas block if you just tune your gun the right way for the purpose that it's served, whether it's, suppressor gun or if you're swapping, upper receivers with different calibers. This is just something to note that you may need to rely on tuning this individually. So that's one thing to consider with our side folder. Everything else on the side folder, in my opinion, is better. And the reason is because it comes pre-assembled with the exception of the receiver extension, the castle nut, and the back plate. You do need to provide those or purchase them from us and put those together as a separate entity of the installation process. Our side folder has an exterior latch on it, whereas the Law Tactical side folder has a button style latch, which I removed. It's tough for me to show you, but it goes right here, and it's rather small, as you can see there, and there's a lot of material right here that kind of shrouds it, and I don't know if they do that to lock it in place, so to keep it from getting tampered with or depressed accidentally, but it does kind of prohibit your fingers from getting in there really all that good. And so just keep that in mind when you're purchasing the Law Tactical, if you decide to go that route, that this button is very small and a little tough to get to. And so, like I said, you put it back together. Installation's reverse of removal or disassembly, and it's relatively straightforward to put back together. Now, both of these receivers, everybody asks, will fire 1 round in place because it does have a catch here for your carrier. And if you look on the MacPherson receiver, well, it's a little bit smaller. Okay, you can see the catch right underneath here, and so that allows you to keep your bolt carrier in, so it's not going to slide away in stowage. And also, if you were brave enough and you get big enough balls, I guess you could fire 1 round out of it. I personally don't recommend it. It will void the warranty of your firearm if you purchase it through us. So just keep that in mind, that we don't advocate that. But I guess in an emergency situation, you could do it. But we all know that the AR-15 is meant to be fired with the receiver extension in the rearward position, and that's where the bolt carrier, the buffer, and the spring are going to go, obviously, once the gun chamber or cycles around. So in addition to the buffer assemblies being different, the length is also different. Now, it's going to be a little tough to see on camera, but basically you're about a ½ inch in length difference. And that's going to be, the Law Tactical is going to be longer. And the reason it's longer is because all of the integrated portion of the lower receiver for the MacPherson is actually done on the lower receiver, whereas the Law Tactical is done on their mount that mounts to the rear of the lower receiver. So again, you have good compatibility with all of your AR receivers, as far as anything that takes a mil-spec receiver will work here. However, you're going to be adding a little bit of length to it. So not the end of the world, but just something to keep in mind when you're building these receivers. While we're not selling them as just a receiver yet, they're going to have a little bit more of a leg up because they're going to be slightly shorter and everything is integrated. That does lead to less serviceability. However, these are rock solid CNC machined, and all the major parts are serviceable. So I don't see any issues with that in the near future. And I'm sure us getting replacement parts won't be a problem. In addition to the Law Tactical being longer, it is also wider by just about 0.134 inches. And so you can kind of see there's a lot more mass on the Law Tactical on this side. And they have to do that, obviously, to facilitate the the folding mechanism because it's part of an exterior system, whereas this is modular and built in. It's a lower profile design and a lot more user-friendly in my opinion. This side right here, one of the biggest snags we found was that when you go to install your bolt catch roll pin, you can't do it with your Law Tactical mount installed. You actually have to do it before because the mount will interfere with your roll pin punch. We use standard Brownells punches. I don't use this one. This is just one that I had on the bench, but it'll just show you this is shorter than my Brownells punch. And you can see that there's significant gap here, but not big enough to actually get a hammer in there. And we tried it at an angle, but I'll be honest, you know, you risk when you put them at an angle, not only damaging the punch, but the punch slipping off the roll pin and hitting the lower receiver and damaging the lower receiver. These are roll pin punches. They do have a nipple on them, but they can only really be put at an angle, you know, so hard before something's going to give or something's going to fail. So just keep that in mind as well. With the MacPherson lower receiver, as you can see here, the roll pin is non-existent. This is a hex head pin, and this pocket here is actually threaded, so that way you can use an Allen wrench and just thread this right in. So there's no need for a punch and a hammer. You just basically thread it right in and you're good to go. So the initial thoughts around our new lower receivers are that they're very well received. We have them in the store right now, so if you want to come take a look, you sure can. We're taking orders right now on builds. Right now these are only going out on complete builds. We're not selling just the receivers. So sorry about that, but that's just the way it's going to be. You'll probably see receivers coming out for sale right around summertime, so about Q3. And for now, we're just selling them as configured as rifles. We have a 4-inch Glock 9mm in stock at the store right now. It's a machine gun. It's pretty cool. When you fold it over, the stock is about the same length as the barrel. And it's really neat because you can probably fit it right in a glove box and rapid deploy it, no problem. Because these things, they take a beating. You can just flip them right open and they lock right in place. There's no slop. They literally do not move. And so they're very well made, very well manufactured, and we haven't seen any issues thus far. So we'd like for you guys to come down, check them out, and see what you think about them. Maybe give us some pros and cons, some of your opinions. You can find us on all the socials, facebook.com/MacPherson Firearms, youtube.com/MacPherson Firearms. Catch us on Gun Shop Guys Monday nights at 8 o'clock. We talk about all things gun shop related, and we're pretty happy to be able to bring you guys some new media that wraps around information on our products. So if you guys have any questions, comments, and concerns, drop them below. Hit us up on the phone, the Facebook, the website. You know how to get a hold of us. So stay tuned, and we're going to bring you guys some more stuff in the future. So thanks for listening, and have a good night.